Alright, so it's been around a month or so since the last Doors update, and that means it's finally time I can properly analyze it and its effect on the game. Now, don't worry, this isn't going to be a Doors is dying video. The developers have done enough to prevent that from happening already. This video is specifically going to look at the Daily Runs update, which, as you know, was the latest Doors update, and we'll be seeing whether or not it was successful at its primary goal. You see, unlike a lot of other updates to this game which just serve to add new content for players to experience, the Daily Run system was intentionally made to boost the game's replayability, which is a very difficult task given how Doors isn't really that replayable. I want to see if this update was a complete flop at doing this, or if it did succeed, as well as some suggestions I'd offer to improve the mechanic to make it even more replayable. We have got a lot to discuss today, so with all of that being said, let's begin. Alright, so by now, I'm sure all of you know how daily runs work. Every single day, players have the opportunity to play through a randomly selected sequence of 20 to 30 rooms from every floor, and if they win, they receive some pretty good rewards, including things like revives and knob boosts, which previously used to cost only Robux. Each playthrough roughly lasts around 5 minutes or so, and players are encouraged to join back each and every day to play the new daily challenge through the streak system. This basically makes it so the longer you consecutively play daily runs, the better rewards you receive. Now, in the case it wasn't obvious enough, every part of the daily runs are meant to boost replayability. Each run being different every day makes each experience feel unique and exciting, and the streak system promises better rewards the longer you come back to play. Now that this update has been out for quite a while though, how effective was it at actually boosting the game's replayability? Well, to answer that, we need to look at the player count statistics. Much like other Roblox games, Doors' player count rapidly increases during updates, then dies back down. The normal level it's typically at, when there have been no updates for a while, is around 15,000 active players at any given moment. Obviously, this number would increase after an update just releases. However, a feature like Daily Runs is intended to boost that base level value to be higher than 15,000. Now that it's been a month since the update released, we can see if the Daily Runs feature managed to actually do that. Based on the data, it appears that the average Doors player count after this update is about the same as it was prior to the Outdoors update, which is still higher than what it was prior to the Daily Runs update. What this essentially means is that Doors player count went into a deficit after the Outdoors update and rebounded when this update was released. So technically, the average player count of the game was boosted, but not to any significant value higher than what it used to be. It just offset a lower than average player count back to normal. What this means in total is that the Daily Runs update was somewhat effective. It definitely heightened player counts, but not to a significantly noticeable level. This to me is a little disappointing, as I wish a feature like Daily Runs had more of an impact on the game's popularity. Doors' normal gameplay loop is notoriously non-replayable after a long while. However, that doesn't mean the game itself can't be made more replayable. Daily Runs have been proven to work to a small degree, as I've just described. However, there's still a lot of potential within this feature to make it transform the game into an even more replayable experience. However, how can that even be achieved? Well, for a while, I was kinda stumped. That was until I saw a feature from a completely different unrelated game that changed my views. I think I know how to make daily runs more effective at boosting replayability. But in order to reveal that, we have to take a detour to an old and familiar face on this channel. That, of course, being Bear. Now, Bear and I have a very interesting history, as this was the game I covered prior to covering Doors, and many of you probably aren't even familiar with it. You see, Bear is a survival horror game first popularized in 2019, and has faded out of the public eye since. Much like Doors, this game had a gameplay loop that was incredibly sluggish at times, and that likely contributed to its fallen player counts. However, this game recently released an update changing that significantly, and now their player counts are quite boosted, and that's because the developers performed two incredibly easy steps. They found what players wanted the most out of their game, and exploited it to unfathomable levels to boost engagement. Essentially, the whole goal of Bear is to collect cosmetic skins. That's why most players join and play. In this recent update to the game, the developers added a mastery system, which forced players to play hours upon hours to unlock very exclusive and special skins. Since most players play Bear to collect skins and not for the actual gameplay, they were forced to actually play the game for long periods of time to unlock a new set of cosmetics. And this worked at boosting the game's player count for an extended period of time, a lot longer than normal updates do. I've even found myself engaging with this new system, and it's rekindled my love for the game, and I've even found myself enjoying the gameplay loop I once thought was sluggish. I believe that Doors, specifically its daily run system, could incorporate the lessons that this Bear game has learned in its last major update. The Doors gameplay cycle itself can't really be made more replayable, so if players were instead forced to interact with it to achieve a long-term goal. The first thing Doors needs to do is figure out what players want the most. For Bear, as I said, it was cosmetic skins, and for Doors, it's probably achievements. Cosmetics in Doors are specifically designed to not be 100% collected like they are in Bear, but achievements are, so it's more likely players would do anything for them. What this means is that Doors could include specific achievements in the game which could only be obtained through playing the game for a very long time, as if they were long-term goals for players who already completed everything in the main game. A very simple example of this would be an achievement for obtaining the final streak icon, which is achieved by having a streak of 60 days. If the rule that no repeated leaderboard attempts was removed, there could actually be an achievement obtained by being near or at the very top of the leaderboard. This would encourage players to repeatedly play through each daily challenge in an attempt to better their score to hopefully make it to the top of the leaderboard, meaning they spend more time in the game trying to get this achievement. There could even be an achievement for interacting with every possible entity in daily runs, encouraging players to look more deeply into their playthroughs each day to try to find all the entities. The achievement system acts as a gold mine of encouraging players to stay in the game longer in an attempt to achieve a long-term goal, and I feel the developers aren't utilizing that as much as they should. Now, naturally, some people wouldn't actually be happy with the introduction of long-term goals, as they want to complete everything immediately. However, overall, I think a long-term achievement system could be a good way to boost the game's replayability. Now, this video isn't meant to rip on the current daily run system or anything like that. I do definitely enjoy this update, and I'll tell you, I've been coming back each and every day to participate in a new daily run. I just think that they have a lot more potential when it comes to achieving the original goal of boosting replayability and engagement of Doors as a whole, and I think that could be achieved by introducing long-term achievements associated with this game mode. It's proven to have worked for Bear, why not do it here? So, with all of that being said, let me know down in the comments what you think of this daily runs game mode, as well as what your own ideas are of how you would improve it to boost replayability. Also, let me know if you think this is a good idea or not to add some sort of mastery system like Bear did, where players have to spend a lot of time in game to achieve a long-term goal to hopefully boost replayability. I think it would work, but what do you think? Anyways, thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.